This episode is sponsored by Mailtrap, an email platform developers love. Try for free at mailtrap.io. There's a link in the show notes. Well, here he is, Tim Rogers, one of the esteemed and wizened product managers of Copilot at Github. Tim, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you doing, Michael?
I'm very well. I was just very pleased that my GitHub actions for my Rails deployments were working. So I'm in a great frame of mind to talk to you today.
That's good to hear. Always good when you see the green check.
The green check. We don't like the red X though. The red X is it's not our friend.
No, not at all.
So I think most people listening are, if not intimately familiar, at least in passing familiar with GitHub and in general what Copilot is. But I should tell you I use it. I've been using it day to day in VS Code and believe it or not, JetBrains editors too, with the extension. What could you give me? Where does it stand today?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really nice place to start. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of people listening who are using Copilot every day, maybe people who've never used it, and then people that are using other kind of AI developer tools. I think I'd frame Copilot overall as an AI developer assistant that helps developers throughout their entire workflow. I think when people first hear GitHub Copilot, they tend to kind of think first of all of the place where we started about 5 years ago, which is this, ghost text thing where you're typing code and Copilot kind of completes it and you can press tab to fill that in. And that's definitely still a really important part of what we have today, but we've grown that and added more and more and kind of bringing Copilot to help developers throughout everything they're doing. So you've got, chat, so you can ask questions, get help while you're working. You've got Copilot edits that can kind of complete whole tasks for you, or agent mode, which kind of loads that up with even more power and the ability for the AI to kind of run your tests and run your linters and fix stuff for you and all that kind of stuff. And then right up to Copilot Code Review as well, which can help you with code reviews and give you feedback on your code. So really the goal here is to think end to end about the software development lifecycle, all the stuff that developers do every day to get work done and to be productive, and helping to make that more productive and hopefully as well more fun with AI.
So that's interesting. So you have several levels of Copilot, right? Let me just ask. The way I'm using it, I guess I'm not. I didn't even know about the code review stuff, to be totally honest with you. I'm using it a lot of. Let's just use Rails, right? Because I do a ton of Rails. I have this controller action. I have a factory bot or a mini test. Doesn't really matter. And I'm sure you know how it is. Requirements change over time, right? The customer comes back and says, "Hey, Mike, I want, we have to account for zebras, not just horses now," right? Whatever it is. I'm telling Copilot to reference the controller action, go to my existing test, and retrofit the test for the new action. It sounds like that may not be a very sophisticated use.
How are you doing that generally? Are you kind of jumping into Copilot chat and asking Copilot there?
Yeah, I do the thing where you reference the files in Copilot chat, and I just say specifically this action relates to this test. The action has changed, the requirements changed. Please modify the test accordingly. But it seems like that's not the optimal way to do this.
I mean, it sounds to me like you're already something of a Copilot expert, to be honest. I mean, using the kind of ability to mention a file, that's already a pretty advanced use that a lot of people don't know about. So kudos to you. Also, even going beyond, it's very common as well for me to talk to developers and to talk to managers where their teams are pretty much only using the code completions thing that Copilot started with, and they haven't even discovered the kind of more recent and more advanced features yet. So the fact that you're using chat and mentioning stuff and things like that is already pretty far ahead. I think one thing that's interesting, I don't know if you've tried it yet, is the agent mode side of things, the ability to not just have a kind of back and forth conversation with Copilot where you say, "How do I do this?" and Copilot says, "Oh, you do it like that," but rather agent mode where you can actually get Copilot to make changes and then run tests and run linters and stuff to validate those changes. So then Copilot can kind of do more complete tasks rather than just giving you an answer and then making you do the work.
So what's the workflow there? Is it that in agent mode, Copilot is, let's just take my simple case, right, of a Rails controller and a mini test. Am I, instead of rewriting the action myself, am I saying, "Hey, Copilot, we have this new requirement. We're not just dealing with horses, we're dealing with zebras too. Can you do that? Is it doing it for me in that case?
Yeah, exactly. I can kind of take you through the story end
Yeah,
to end
please,
there.
please.
So with code completions, which is the kind of first, I guess, the first like Copilot modality or product, you would be, yourself make it in those code files making changes, and
Yep.
Copilot would kind of like complete your sentences like a good friend. So it would like see what you're doing and say, oh, this is what I think you're going to do next, and you can press tab to complete that. So that's like one version. The next level up is the kind of chat version where you're having a back and forth conversation. You're saying like, how do I do X or how do I do Y? So how would I adapt this test for this new requirement? Then the third level is like this agent mode version where instead of like Copilot coming back to you with like answers like a chat, instead Copilot is able to go away and do stuff. So you could say like, oh, I need to adapt this code and these test cases for this new requirement. And Copilot can then actually directly make changes to those files. And of course, you can review those changes before they're actually like saved and committed in your project. And not only can it make changes, but it can also run Rubocop and run RSpec and that kind of stuff, and then iterate based on the results of that. So
Huh.
instead of it kind of being, you ask Copilot for something and then it comes back to you, but you're still kind of fully driving, it moves maybe more into a kind of like partially self-driven mode where Copilot's able to do more of the work, more of the validation, and kind of produce more complete results. Now, I wouldn't necessarily be saying to that like, go and implement this whole massive feature. You
Right. I'm
probably
not
want to
gonna. I'm
work
not
on
gonna
your own.
hand it my RFP and be like, "Thanks, buddy."
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that, it's going to do, by no means is it going to do everything that a developer can do.
Sure.
But once you've kind of broken that down into individual tasks, at that point is a good stage at which you can start to think about giving some of those jobs to Copilot through agent mode and like letting it do some of the work for you, do some of that boilerplate stuff in particular, so that you can either maybe move on to the next thing more quickly or jump in at the point where it gets really interesting rather than like doing a bunch of like boilerplate stuff that's not so fun.
Right. Like the example of updating tests to match a new requirement is
Exactly. Yeah. In that
yeah.
case, I can imagine like the bit you're probably more interested in is the actual code change. You
Right.
want to put more of your attention into that part. But let's be honest, like most developers don't love writing tests. I'm sure there are some out there. I haven't met many of them, but
I
that's
hate it
probably
with a
the part
fiery
where
passion.
that's the part where probably you're like, actually, I'd love it if an AI agent could do more of that work for me. And you can choose to like delegate that task to an agent and say, I've made the code changes now. Can you put the test cases in place? And you can tell the agent exactly what test cases you want, or you can let the agent be creative and let it figure out what the relevant edge cases are and things like that. And of course, it is always an iterative process as well, right? Like I'm definitely not saying, the first response, the first kind of code change you get from agent is going to be perfect first time, but you can iterate, you can continue to chat, you can continue to kind of ask it to make changes, and it's able to react to that and move forward.
What about? I mean, this might be revealing too much of my dark past as a old school iOS developer, but what about like annoying things? I don't know how familiar you are with this, but it might be a terrible example, like storyboards, right? Complicated blobs of XML that tend to break in source control if you have multiple developers. Can Copilot look at files like that, or even maybe a more sticking with Rails, maybe an easier example? How about migrations? Can it look at the database schema and say, well, you I don't know, you want a relationship between zebra and horse or customer and employee, but you don't have one. Let me write that migration and run it for you. Or can it not? Can it not touch outside tools?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't tried that specific case, but I'd
Okay.
expect it to be something that works pretty well. I mean,
Okay.
like Rails migrations are like a well-defined format. There's
Yeah.
lots of that in the training data, and it's the models that we're working with. I'm sure have seen millions of Rails migrations just from their knowledge of the internet. And these agents, I already mentioned like their ability, that agent mode in VS Code, it can like run your tests and run your linter and things like that. And indeed, it can also run Rails DB migrate to apply migrations as well. In VS Code, it's going to like ask you before it does that, before it runs bash commands, it's going to check with you to make sure you're okay with it. But that is something that it can do. And the ability for it to run those commands itself then gives it the ability to react to the results. So if it runs Rails DB migrate and it fails for some reason, maybe maybe there's a problem with the database connection, or maybe it's made a mistake in that migration. It can then see the error message and adapt based on that. So that's a really important part of how these kind of agents that we're seeing now work. It's the ability to like interact with the world and react to what happens when it tries to do things. Before it was just a chat where you said, how do I do this, and the agent replied, and you could kind of continue a conversation. But with the kind of agents paradigm, these agents have what we call tools and the ability to like do stuff and collect more information so they can work better and do more useful stuff for you.
So what I'm trying to get is what are the bounds of Copilot? Like where can't it go in a standard coding kind of workflow?
I mean, I think one really good example of things that Copilot won't have access to naturally are like, all the conversations you're having in Slack or on Teams, those kind of things is like a clear gap. Or you might be kind of doing planning and scoping. You mentioned an RFP. Maybe that RFP is in a Word document or a Google Docs doc, and Copilot isn't going to have access to that stuff naturally. Obviously, you can kind of like paste it in, but that's a bit of extra work for you. Of course, that's a place where extensibility and model context protocol can play in. Not sure if that's something you've come across yet, but it's a kind of new.
No. So what does that mean? What is a model context protocol?
Yeah, it's a new standard basically that allows like basically an open standard for extending AI applications and giving them access to new data and new tools that they can use. So what that means in practice is that kind of developer tools providers that you're already using, or maybe indeed something like Google Docs or Slack, can provide connections for AI applications so that you can access that data. So just to take one example, Sentry have a model context protocol server that you can use. And
Sure.
if you have that kind of set up with an agent that you're using, then if you kind of paste, for example, the URL of an exception in Sentry, then the agent can actually go and view that and see the stat trace and all those kind of things. So it provides a great way to extend the capabilities of these agents and give them access to both like developer tools that are out there on the market, SaaS tools, or indeed you can build your own MCP servers if you want to connect to your own stuff you built yourself, for example. And that's something that I think has been really exciting over the last few months, like seeing this open ecosystem develop. And you look on GitHub where many of these are being built, and there's so many MCP servers from so many providers, and then lots of community projects as well. And that's a super powerful thing because it means that these agents don't have to just be limited to like the knowledge that's in their heads and the contents of your repo, but instead they can connect to all kinds of other places to learn more stuff and I guess have access to the same stuff that you do as a developer, right? Like, let's say you hired a new intern in your organization and you asked them to complete a task.
Oh
If they
God.
didn't have access to all the same stuff that you, Michael, have access to, it wouldn't be surprising if they kind of failed and did a bad job. But if you give them access to the same context that you have, then they're in with a much better chance of doing great stuff and getting the task done successfully.
So this is interesting. So let's take what I think is a pretty standard. See, this is all right. Every organization has their own weird, practices that when you leave, you find out, oh my God, what were we doing? I could tell you horror stories about just living in Mercurial forever and closing my eyes and pretending it didn't exist for about 5
I feel
years.
sorry for you. I didn't have to experience that. I came into the world, when Git had already taken over, and I'm not sad that I didn't have to interact too much with SVN or Mercurial.
Oh, SVN is even like, you know what? We're not. You should see my emails. I get flame wars every time I'm like, SVN is bad. So we'll just leave it there. Let's just say I was quite happy to embrace the world of Git. It does kind of bring to mind though. Why can't? So my workflow, right? I'll just use myself as an example because it's one I actually know. It seems like that case side we talked about right at the beginning of the show, where the GitHub action triggers based on whatever weird merge request rules I put in, depending on the client, right? They all have different, rules. Everything goes good. It gives me you get the check mark. The way I have it, everything's wired into Slack. Couldn't I just have Copilot do the code review for basic stuff, right? Let's say, a client wants to filter this, I don't know, table view by ascending or descending date, whatever it is. So, you get all those kind of silly, easy requests. And instead of doing that by hand, couldn't I have Copilot agent mode do that for me, commit it, do the merge request, do the code review, running all my mini tests, or depending on the project, doesn't really matter, right? Running the tests. Once it gets a pass, just like GitHub Actions, then deploy it, or am I asking it to do something that's too far?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. And some of that's kind of like, I guess, philosophical and comes down to like what limits we and you want to put in place
I
to
am
like
embracing our robotic overlords, and I want to be kept like a cat. So
you want
that's
that on the record. You want to make sure that it's in the transcript of this
you know
podcast that
what? I've got
you're
I
on the
got
side of the robotic overlords.
yeah, 3 kids. One just turned 9. I'm recovering from a birthday party, which of course the children are disease vectors. I just want to lay down and have Copilot do the work. So Tim, help me. How do I put him to work?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a bunch of different worlds here, I guess. Like in general, the kind of workflow if you're using agent mode in VS Code is that you get the agent to like, you know, write the code that you wanted to write, update the test you want it to update, and like validate that. And then it's your job to actually go ahead and like commit those files and create the pull request and all that kind of stuff. That's the kind of, I guess, default mode that we have then. That's how most people use it. You can, of course, if you want, like there's nothing stopping you from instructing Copilot to, commit the files and then push, but that's not, to be honest, what most people do because most people kind of want to take a bit more control at that point, although you definitely can.
Yeah,
And then I think the other thing I go
I don't
ahead.
understand those people. I mean, I saw The Matrix in 1999, and it was aspirational. I mean, did I get the wrong message? Maybe. Like, I give me that blue pill every time.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're starting to move more in these kind of directions. So the project that I'm working on right now that I'm really excited about is something that we call Project Padawan, and that's actually moving these agents a lot more in the direction that you're talking about. So the agent mode that you have in VS Code today, it like runs on your machine and makes changes to files and run tests and stuff, and then kind of leaves it up to you to add those files and commit and then push. Project Padawan, which I'm working on now, like kind of takes it a step further. And instead of having something running on your machine, it's running in the cloud, and it actually produces kind of fully tested PRs as the artifact. So you assign an issue to Copilot in GitHub, just like you'd assign it to a human. And then at the end, you get a request for review from the robot saying, like, how does this code look? And then you can kind of iterate with Copilot online. So we're starting like right now, that's not the workflow that most people are using. Most people are like, working with this agent, like working with the agent to make changes, and then they're taking over for the whole like commit and push and PR step. But we are working on that like next evolution where we move Copilot to be more asynchronous and something that can run in the background, complete work, and then give you a tap on the shoulder, metaphorically once it's done.
Interesting. And to clarify for the people who don't accept our overlords, this is a choice, right? You can choose what level of autonomy to give Copilot, even in the Padawan case, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So
Okay.
in VS Code, we always have like these kind of tight controls where like when Copilot wants to run a like bash command, it asks you to approve it just so you can kind of be really clear on exactly what it's doing and like, you're very much in control. In that like Padawan use case, it does have more freedom to like do stuff because it's running in like a cloud ephemeral environment. And there's you don't when it's running on your machine, there's that danger of like, oh, it could delete all of your files if it can run commands without permission. Whereas, running in a like temporary cloud environment, that's not an issue. But we still want to make sure, we're not setting it up so these agents can like push code to your default branch and deploy without your permission. Like we're keeping them like locked down to a very strict, like there has to be a PR and then it has to be approved and then it has to be merged. So trying to like, I guess, balance these things, like allow developers to be more productive, to get more stuff done and to focus more on the fun stuff with agents, but still like, I guess trying to keep everyone like aligned on the development best practices that we've evolved over the past few decades, right? Like code reviews are a great thing and AI doesn't mean that they should go away. If anything, they become more important and hopefully we can augment them with AI as well.
So, okay, we have Project Padawan coming out, and I know we're running short on time here. Where are we going? I know, and obviously you can't reveal secret things you're developing, fine, right? Just in general, for, a lot of my listeners are like me, right? They're small ISVs, they're small, independent dev shops, effectively. And I can tell you, just Copilot and, other kinds of AI tools have been, frankly, allowing my little shop to punch above its weight, which has been really nice. Just my stupid example of tests, not having to write every single test myself or have one of my people here manually write them has allowed us to actually get more done, deliver more value. Yeah, more value to our end clients for either less money or just say, hey, we can do a more complicated implementation at that same budget because and we can keep your requirement that we have to have like 100% or 80% test coverage, whatever. Which is a whole argument for another day, and I've never won this argument, so I'm not even touching it. It's like just not gonna. I know. I think it's stupid to have a metric that says you have to have X% coverage, but lots of people do. So fine, you win. Where are we going? Is like Padawan to me sounds like an obvious next step, but what's the step? Just high level, not revealing anything proprietary. What's the step after Padawan? Would you say?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I think there's broadly speaking, I would say that over the past few years, we've seen a bunch of productivity gains coming from AI tools, just allowing developers to get work done more quickly. And that's something you've kind of, referred to there, how much of a difference it's making for like you and your business, like being able to get more work done and, ultimately like deliver more for your clients at the price they want. And that's amazing to hear. I hear lots of these stories every day, but it's great to hear one firsthand, and especially from like I hear these stories most often from like really large enterprises, but it's great to
Right.
hear about the difference it's making for like a, small to medium sized business as well.
It's always nice to be the chihuahua nipping at their heels. So
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm most excited about really is like there's already been a bunch of productivity increases, and I just want to like see us continue that. Allow developers just to get more done, and not just to get more done, but spend more of their time doing the stuff that they find really, really interesting. We're already
absolutely.
talking about like no one likes writing tests, and there's a bunch of other tasks like that that most developers don't really like doing. The painful refactors that you have to do from time to
Ugh.
time, or like keeping documentation up to date, those kind of things. And what really excites me as like a product manager working on this, but also someone who's been a developer for a lot of my career, is being able to spend more of my time on the stuff that makes me excited and that I actually really enjoy doing, and less of the time on the boring stuff and the boilerplate. And I think the shift towards more of these more agents and more autonomy to AI is really going to enable that, like being able to take the tasks that are less exciting and hand them off so that you can focus on the more interesting stuff. And that's what agent mode is all about, and it's what Project Padawan is all about. And I'm sure that's only going to continue from here, with more agents that are specialized for different tasks that can just, get more done.
Now, if Project Padawan is ultimately successful but doesn't meet your requirements at the end, will you allow it on the council but not grant it the rank of master? Is that the plan, or is this like an Ahsoka situation where you're actually just gonna like put it on trial and have it quit? What's the plan if things go wrong? I'm obviously joking. I should say it's May 6th. We should have done this on May the 4th. I
Yeah,
didn't
May
realize you
4th would
had
have
a
been very
project.
appropriate
It would have been perfect.
for
I,
Star Wars.
I,
Yeah,
I'm just pitching to you guys real quick. Do you remember the Chaos Monkey?
I do.
Yeah. Yeah. You should have a version of that, a Copilot that actually just tries to go out and break your code, right? Kind of a red team situation. And you got to call it like Mole or Sith or something like that. You got to stick in the theme.
Yeah, I love that idea. I think, this kind of with Project Padawan, what we're kind of trying to build here is a sort of general purpose like developer agent that can like, that really goes from idea to code is the kind of focus. You've got an issue, you've got a task you want to complete, and it can like do it. It can do it for you and produce a PR at the end. And something like agent mode in VS Code is a very similar idea, but like more synchronous, running on your computer while you watch it. But I think there's going to be like a proliferation of lots of different specialized agents doing different kinds of things in the future. The example you just gave is a really great one. Like imagine a kind of penetration testing agent
Yep.
that's like, testing your APIs and like proactively looking all the time, all day, every day for issues that might blow up in your face in the future. And that same kind of, that's one of the areas that I'm really focused on and excited about in general. Like something like both Agent Mode and Project Padawan, they're like agents that react to, you give them a task, give them an instruction, and they complete it faithfully and hopefully really well. But there's another future world where it's like you've got these agents that are more like kind of they're the workers in the background that are like observing, constantly working, constantly thinking to help you to up your game and improve the work that you're doing. That security penetration testing one is one. There's lots of others that come to mind. Imagine a test coverage agent that's always kind of looking at your code and trying to identify opportunities to improve the testing, and is not just like being that annoying thing that like pokes you and says, oh, you've got tests missing here, but actually like writes the code to fill in those gaps and then pushes a pull request and then you can merge it. Or indeed like agents that can look for code duplication and help you to refactor to reduce that duplication and move towards like, DRY, like don't repeat yourself kind of vibes. So that's something that I'm really excited about, like these, moving from agents that are more reactive, that are taking tasks that you give them, towards agents that can be more proactive, that are always there, like a friend in the background, like waiting for opportunities to help you.
I love it. Now, Padawan is not generally available, right? Just to clarify.
Yeah, that's right. It's something that we're getting ready to release pretty soon, but not generally available yet.
Okay, awesome. Well, I always wrap with one question for everybody. It's the same question. And the question is, what is one tool that you just absolutely love, can't live without? But the stipulation is it cannot be a tool that is yours or your employer's. So it can't be anything from GitHub. It can be, I will tell you, the most popular category is coffee and tea related paraphernalia so far. So it could be anything, right? It could be one guy a couple weeks ago came on and he had a Mr. Coffee heating thing, so he can keep his coffee warm on his desk all day. That was his tool. So just whatever you want. The galaxy is yours.
I'm going to give two answers, I think, if you allow me.
Everybody cheats. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, you've inspired me with the coffee one. I'm a big coffee fan, so I have a Sage Barista Pro espresso machine that keeps me going on the long days working from home. We're a fully remote company, as I said at the beginning. Like I work with a very US centric team, so I'm often up late in meetings in the dark. Don't worry, I don't have to work 24 hours a day. I just like start my day a bit later to fit in with the US. So that's a really important one. That keeps me going on the the long days building cool AI stuff. In terms of developer tools, I'd say probably like the one that like just adds the most value for me every day, excluding ones made by GitHub and Microsoft, I'd say Homebrew is a huge one for me.
Oh, for sure. I didn't realize you were a Mac guy like me. Very good.
I'm a Mac guy. Have been for a long time now. But yeah, like hard to overemphasize like how much of a difference that makes to the developer workflow, right?
I don't even know.
Just so easily get access to the tools that you need and install them, and not go through dependency hell every time you want something new. Even just today, right? Like I needed to convert Markdown to HTML, and I was able to actually ask Copilot, like, what tool should I use to do that? And I knew that as soon as I wanted that tool, it was going to be on Homebrew. I was going to be able to install it. It was going to be easy. So I'm very grateful to the maintainers of that project for the fact that I don't have to be like, having complex build dependencies and running builds myself and creating the binaries. But instead, I've just got one command to get the utility I need. So salute to the Homebrew maintainers.
Absolutely. I've for years been kind of advocating that Apple ought to toss them some money because they're effectively maintaining a core piece. I don't know any developer who's running a Mac that's not using Homebrew. I'll put it that way. And
it's a huge project.
Yeah. Honestly, it's core, in my opinion, to the system, and probably should get more support. But yeah. Well, Tim, it's been a blast. I hope you come on soon. We can talk when the Padawan becomes a knight.
Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.